Coach, we heard all offseason about Travis, how hard he's working on catching the ball. He had his best game on Saturday, catching the ball, looked really natural doing it. How much harder is it to stop this offense when that's an option for you?
It just gives us one more element. If you go back, to when Chad was here, we did a lot with the backs, guys like Zach Brooks, and then Fuller was very effective out of the backfield. So that just adds another element, something else that they got to prepare for. And as we're playing that cat and mouse game to kind of see what their plan is, that just gives us another option to go to if they're taking away some of the run stuff.
Tony, what kind of a luxury was it to have Amari Rodgers and his veteran experience back in the lineup again this week? And can you tell us a little bit about watching him come through his development over the last few months, getting over the injury?
I tell you, Amari is the type of young man that inspires you as a coach, just because his demeanor. First of all, when he had his injury, he still has a smile on his face, and he just goes to work every single day. And I've said it many times in my description of him, he's like a pro. He prepares like a pro. Attention to detail. He's very, very focused. And so that just brings, a confidence to you as a coach and an encouragement too, because it challenges me just like Deshaun and Trevor. Those guys, they challenge you every single day to bring your best. So that's what I see in Amari. And then for his teammates, it's the same thing. And then it gives him just confidence to get back out there and play. I mean, it's just unbelievable, and that's just going to give us more depth. Going down the stretch. It's going to continue to help DeAndre Overton improve because they're playing the same position. So it was fun to see him get out there. I love the way the crowd reacted. Even though I'm in the box, I don't get to engage much in the crowd, but I think there was a big cheer when he caught his first pass. So it was good to see him back out there.
2 games into the post-Mitch Hyatt era, how happy have you guys been with Jackson and his play?
Jackson, we've known all along how talented Jackson is. And the biggest thing with Jackson, I'm really, really impressed and pleased with just his maturity, coming in and really accepting that there's a certain way we do things and buying in and not really comparing himself to Mitch, but just going and being himself, but understanding that on that left side, at that left tackle for the last 4 years, we've had a luxury of not even having to think about what's going on over there with Mitch. And so far, so good. He's been very, very consistent. I think he brings another element of physicality with the size, the way he likes to mix it up in the run game, and has been doing good in the passing game. So I'm excited for his continued growth and his maturity, and you're starting to see that those guys up front are starting to gel together and creating that chemistry and cohesion that we need.
Tony, what's your assessment of how the offense is looking overall these first 2 games, and how much room for growth is that?
It was good to get out and play Texas A&M, and obviously Georgia Tech too. So you're coming out the gate with 2 Power 5 opponents. Obviously, still some unknown in both of those games. Ton of respect for Elko. Didn't know a whole lot about Georgia Tech, so really proud of how our guys accepted that challenge. They were ready to make adjustments, and obviously once we settled in, they took over the line of scrimmage. So up front, I think in the trenches, I've been pleased so far with the physicality up front. Guys really trying to establish the line of scrimmage. For the most part, we've been good from a communication standpoint. Haven't had a whole lot of missed assignments. Everybody's targeted in the right direction, so I've been pleased there. Like what I see in the second half, starting to develop that instinct that we got to finish games, in the second half. And I know we came out and had those first 2 3-and-outs in the second half, but those were 2 drop balls there on that first drive. But pleased with the way that they responded and took over the game. So overall, I think we're headed in the right direction. But the great thing about this past week is we felt like we had control of the game, but when we go in this afternoon and we meet with the offense, we're going to be able to point out some things in some areas where we can get better. So we got a group that's confident right now, but we also got enough of what we put on film to keep us humble, to keep us hungry, so we can continue to improve.
Where is Travis as far as him imposing his will on games, in the sense where maybe he wasn't as much of a factor in the run game this past week?
Right.
I guess the best guys kind of get past the idea that they're targeted by the other team and stuff, and can make plays no matter what.
Right, I think he's at a point now to where he has just confidence it's a complete game, and he understands that he has to take it as it comes. There's going to be opportunities where he's going to be able to impose his will running the football, and he's still getting into the groove of things. For a running back, it's all about groove, it's all about feel, and he's going to continue to get better in the run game, as we go forward in the season. But for him to have a game where he's catching the ball out of the backfield, still making an impact, even though, statistically in the run game he might not have been there, and it was good for Lindsay to get in there too, and that was probably what I was most proud of my unit. Lindsay's played a little bit last year, but you hadn't seen him in that situation. And for him to come right off the bench and spark us with a couple of big runs, and then just the body language that I saw in him, just the demeanor, just the excitement, and the eagerness to get out there, I think that's going to be something that's going to push Travis even more to make sure that he's being as disciplined as he needs to be as he tried to figure out early on in the run game, early in games, to where he can get to a point where he can impose his will.
I know you guys have a rotation you stick with, but why Linjay so much in the second half yesterday? Was it because he seemed to be finding the run lanes more? Did you feel like you had control of the game and let's get Linjay out there and get him some, when the game's still on the line against a big time opponent, let's get him some touches?
Right, I think when Linjay came in the game to spell Travis, Travis needed a break, and he came in immediately, and you could just tell that he was finding it. He was finding the creases, and he created just a different spark for us. And so it was more a function of he had the spark, created a little bit of a momentum, but then I wanted to see how he was going to handle it, and he got in there and he continued to find the big runs. Not that Travis wouldn't have found those runs, but it just happened to be that Linjay, was heating up right there, and I wanted to see if he could continue to maintain that that level of play throughout the course of extended snaps, and not just be a situation where you come in and it lined up and now you got a big play, but overall he was able to be consistent, and that was pleasing because now it gives me something to keep him humble, keep him hungry, and then also I can use that to push Travis too.
What do you remember about the way you guys handled that unique environment at Syracuse 2 years ago? What do you tell this group of guys? A lot of different guys, but what do you tell them about one of them?
That one, it's going to be loud. Contrary to what you may think, it's going to be loud. It's going to be hostile. We have to make sure that we block out the noise. We focus on ourselves, and we got to throw what happened last week out the window. This is a team. I think at that time they ended up that season maybe not having a winning record, and they beat us up there on a Friday night. So this is a team that is confident. Right, they feel like they played with us last year. They beat us, a couple of years ago. So this is a team that you can't look at what happened to them last week and think you're just going to walk in there and they're going to lay down. They still got everything on the table for them. This is a division game. They're undefeated in the division just like we are. So this is going to be a situation where we got to control what we can control, not get distracted by anything other than coming from the outside, and just know that these guys are going to come to play. It's a very, very good football team, despite maybe the outcome last week.
Maurice said the number one thing he remembers about that game is the environment and how it was a lot louder and different than he expected. I guess, how is it playing up there? How different is it?
Well, one, it's a dome, and when you go in, it's there's a lot of what I remember the first time going up there is there's a lot of tradition that you may not know about Syracuse football, being where we are, but they got the placards of the players up on the wall, so you kind of see that, oh man, these guys got some tradition, they got some pride. Their fans get into it. They do a good job of creating some noise, when they can, just like we do in our stadium when the defense is on the field, and again, it gets louder than what you would think it'd be. The noise is trapped in there. So it's going to be a hostile environment. It's homecoming for them, so they got a couple things, that they're playing into. Their guys are going to be excited, and again, it's a division game, and everything is still on the table for both teams.
Tony, what's the assessment through 2 games of Chalk and the rest of those guys blocking in both the running game and also on the outside and some of the horizontals?
It's good to see those guys make plays when they had opportunities with balls thrown to them. We had a couple of design plays where we're trying to get them, involved in the game vertically. And again, Elko had a good call at the time. We were anticipating a split safety look. We were trying to drive the ball down the field on a little play action to the tight end. Been pleased with the targeting in the run game. Still just challenging those guys. There's some things with the RPO stuff that you got to you got to be careful. You got to be on the borderline of being aggressive to also making sure that you're playing within the rules. So in some of the other stuff, we just want to get those guys to continue to finish blocks, but for the most part, they've been targeted exactly where we want them to be, and now it's just a function of, I think, playing experience is going to help those guys to be more technically sound from a fundamental standpoint.
Trevor entered the season with really high expectations and Heisman favorite. How has he done the first couple of weeks, not trying to do too much and just kind of play his game?
I think the first game, probably a couple of decisions that he made, want to get back. I think the one he was trying to throw out of bounds, the ball didn't get out of bounds, ended up in an interception. But I thought, this past week, he was taking what was there, not trying to do too much. I mean, Trevor's going to be Trevor. I don't think Trevor's going to let the outside noise influence him. He's going to, and again, we're still early in the season. We're going to put more on his plate as we go and give him opportunities to drive the ball down the field, manage the system. But just in terms of managing the system, we've been very pleased. He's taken another step in terms of being able to handle his protections, which I think is critical to a quarterback's success, to be able to play at a high level when you can manage your protections and feel confident back there. And I think, too, just with the backs. I think Travis gave up 2 hurries in the game, right out the gate, first play of the game. He got somebody in his face. I thought he did a good job of getting settled in and moving in the pocket. If you watch some of the things that he did in the pocket when there was a little bit of hurry from either Travis or one of the offensive linemen, man, he reset, he threw strikes down the field. So I think he's settling in. He's handling everything around here, as you can see, as we can see inside the building and on campus, the way that you would expect him to. And I don't think he's going to be influenced by all that talk. I think he's just going to go out and continue to play his style of play and play at a high level, and all that other stuff will come to him down the road.
Is it hard at all to not worry about the stats and that kind of stuff for a player?
Not for me. I mean, I don't care about stats. Even in my room with my guys, I just worry about how we play. Because again, I got an engineering background, so I know how stats can be manipulated. So you can kind of make stats look any way you want to. So I don't talk a whole lot about stats. I just talk about the biggest one is winning. That's the number one stat for me, is figure out a way to win, and then just making sure that we're giving guys opportunities. So if you want to talk about a stat, I just want to make sure that I'm giving guys an opportunity, the playmakers, getting them their touches so that they can take care of the stat sheet.
With Linjay, what's been the most noticeable part of his development from your standpoint?
If you watch Linjay compared to last year, the game is slowing down, so he can get himself lined up. He's not relying on the quarterback to tell him where to line up. I thought he did a good job in pass protection. There were a couple of times he stepped up in there. So the game is really slowing down, and I think that is allowing him to play even faster with the ball in his hands, because now he's not thinking. He understands what we're trying to get accomplished. He understands the details. I can communicate with him, in between series. If I got to get him on the telephone, I can say, hey, Linjay, this is an adjustment we're going to make in protection. He understands the language. So just overall, his knowledge of the system has greatly increased, which has allowed the game to slow down, which I think, results in him being able to play fast with and without the ball.
What's it like in your meeting room? He was kind of quiet around us the other day.
Linjay is probably one of the funniest young men that you'll ever be around, and he doesn't even know it. It's actually refreshing. He has an innocence to him, just from where he came from. Great family, growing up down there in the country. Still has a whole lot of life experience that he has to go through, so there's a lot of things. I wouldn't say he's naive, he just hasn't been placed in those situations, and so he doesn't always know exactly how to respond. He never responds in a bad way, but you just never know how Linjay is going to respond. And I tell you what, he keeps us on our toes, and he doesn't even know it. He's not even trying to be funny, but half the stuff that he says, I mean, our meeting room will be in the middle of a serious conversation, and he'll say something, we'll just all erupt in laughter, just because he's got that spirit around him. And again, you can tell with people that he's not comfortable with and doesn't know, he's going to be shy at first, not going to say a whole lot. But once you get him talking, it's hard to get him to be quiet sometimes.
Syracuse's defense obviously had a rough time last week against a lot of unknowns with Maryland, but they're familiar with y'all. How would you assess where they are just compared to what, personnel standpoint, what you saw from them last year, and do you think their first priority is going to be to stop the run like Texas A&M's was?
Well, I think the way they're structured, that's what they want to do. They want to be an 8-man front team. They're going to play a one-high structure, get that safety or that nickel Sam in the box, try to get to at least a 3-man box or a 4-man box with the backers and the safety down there. So they're built to stop the run. They're going to make you beat them with the pass, make you be patient to go down the field. I think the 2 defensive ends that they have are as good as we're going to see, in this league or at all this year. And they're back. They got a lot of experience. They played against us for several years, so they're going to be confident. The linebackers are new, so it's hard to get an assessment of those guys. And again, I said last week's game, I don't think is a fair assessment. Like you said, there was a lot of unknowns. You could tell that Maryland did a good job of jumping in and out of personnel, trying to make them adjust. But they're very familiar with us. A lot of those guys on the back end, played against us, so they're going to be confident. They're playing at home. Those guys felt like they played with us last year until late, and some of those guys were there from the year that they beat us. So I think structurally they're going to try and stop the run, and then see if we can be precise with our passing game to move the ball down the field.
Do you have any examples with Linjay of how he acts in the meeting room? Or, like, you remember that funny one that you were just rapping?
Some of those things may not be appropriate for this setting. But he asks a lot of questions. Because one thing I try to do with my guys is make it more than just football. Make sure that I'm taking time out of our schedule to at least talk about what's going on in their lives. And so there'll be things that that we're talking about that he won't know anything about, but he's going to present like he knows. And so he'll make up this elaborate story, and all of us will start laughing, and I'll say, now, Linjay, nah, coach, I'm just joking. I don't know what y'all are talking about. But so he just does things like that, and he's just got his own unique way of how he views the world, and I appreciate that. But I also appreciate how he's taking advantage of all of the learning experiences that are associated with this program. And so I've seen just a tremendous amount of growth from a maturity standpoint, but at the same time, it's good to see that he's not losing, his roots of where he comes from and how he's raised between his mom and his grandma.
I know with Travis, he came in better than you guys were expecting. With Linjay, do you think you were getting this in a recruiting game, or is he been about?
I felt like, I saw something in Linjay in camp, and I said it before. You reminded me so much of Ellington with his ability to make those full speed cuts, to see the whole field. So I knew that there was some electricity to him, but what I didn't know, and it's hard to assess with any high school kid, is just how tough and how durable he was going to be. I mean, he's a tough little booger. Even though he's only about 195 pounds, man, he doesn't mind throwing his body around, and he's a guy that not like Travis. They're going to take some punishment, and they may not be feeling 100%, but he's able to push through it. And so that's what I wasn't sure about, and that's hard to assess. But I knew there was some electricity with him. That he was a guy that you give him some space, he can make something happen.
I think Coach Sweeney characterized him as a desperate hunter. Is that an adjective that you would use as well?
Him and Travis both. I mean, when you hand those guys the ball, I mean, they're trying to go score every single play. They understand that every play in football is designed to score. They got one guy that they're responsible for. Most times it's going to be the safety, and they're trying to get to that guy, and they're trying to get into the end zone. That's just how they run.
Tony, you mentioned humility and staying humble a couple of times already. How difficult a job is that with these guys? Because they're already the number one team in the country, and everybody on the outside, including friends and family, you're talking to them like, you're not going to be challenged until Christmas time at the earliest. How difficult a job is that for you guys to keep them on the straight and narrow?
I think it's the difficult. I guess the way to answer the difficult part is to make sure that we stay consistent to remind them every single day. I think the culture and the environment here within the structure of the program and the way Coach Sweeney operates, we're constantly, giving visuals and reminders of just how easy it is to go, as he would say, from the penthouse to the outhouse. But I think the biggest thing for us is just to make sure that we're using those opportunities and we don't look the other way. I think that's the biggest challenge. And one of the hardest things in life, that I've learned is how to handle success. And so I think the biggest thing is that windshield mentality that we have. So when we come in today, we're going to put this game to bed and we're moving on to the next, and we know the season starts tomorrow, and we're just trying to go to 1-0. So I think that coach helps by creating that environment, and then as coaches, it's just our job to make sure that every single day we point out, and you don't get caught up being so busy that you overlook those opportunities to express to these young men where they need to stay humble.
Are there opportunities where you guys can say, hey, you know what it takes to be the best, so let's work that way, let's plan that way, let's do that?
Right. I think you always rely on your experience, and we tell the older guys, you guys know what it takes, but these young ones, they don't. So it's your responsibility in conjunction with the coaches to make sure that they understand what it takes, and then it's our job as coaches is to make sure that we maintain our windshield mentality and our tunnel vision to be able to point out opportunities for our older guys to express to them, this is an opportunity where you can get better. And there's going to be, even though a lot of people say, and we even feel like we had good control of the game, there's going to be a lot for us to coach off of this tape, because we left several plays out there. And so that's where, as coaches, it's our job to make sure we point out those opportunities and we don't overlook those opportunities because we were able to win the game. And I think that's how you stay humble.
Going back 8 years or so, would you say a big part of the transition from being a really good program to an elite program has been getting the offensive linemen in here that have allowed you guys to go from a so-called finesse team to being able to play smash mouth or ground and pound and that kind of style? I
think that's a huge, a huge part of why we've been successful. And hopefully you've heard me say it since Jeff and I have taken over that the guys like the Mitch Hyatts and the Taylor Hearns, they kind of changed the mentality up front to where we could go in and win in the trenches. And I think that Trevor and Travis and all those guys and T and Ross, they get all the accolades. But if you can't block for them, you can't protect the passer, and you can't create holes for the run back, then you're not going to be successful. You can't win. I think also on the defensive line, being able to go against those guys every single day is really what's helped us on offense to create that physical mindset. Because even though we sometimes get lumped into the spread category, if you watch us, I mean, we're a two-back, and Travis runs the ball majority of the time between the tackles, and he gets to the second and third level, and then his speed takes over. But we want to be a downhill two-back, offense that's multiple, that can throw the ball, make you defend the entire field, but at the end of the day, we're coming right at you in the run game, and I think that's really what's helped us transition. And then also, too, the ability to protect the passer, and the ability to protect the passer in six-man protections, to be able to get four receivers out in routes majority of the time has really helped us to be able to put pressure on defenses.
Specifically offensively, was it a conscientious decision among the staff that, hey, we're getting the Nukes and the Sammys and the Tajes in here, the missing ingredient is we need those big physical linemen up front to really take the next step?
I think any football program is going to want to be built from the trenches. I think it was just a function of, it took like a guy like a Mitch Hyatt to come and believe in what we're doing, even though we may not have had that track record. Whereas you can always look back and say, okay, over the years, there's always been great skill guys. At Clemson, same thing. It's always been great D linemen. There's always been great linebackers. But for getting those guys to believe in what we're doing, and then for those guys to come in and have success, I think is what's helped us to be able to continue to recruit at a high level on the offensive line. So I think it was just a function of some of those guys believing in what we're doing, and then coming in and working out for them, and now we can carry that forward.
Tony, how far do you feel like you are from being comfortable throwing Mikey or Ches out there as that third guy?
The game Saturday was, I wanted those guys to get in and experience that, but at the end of the day, in a game like that, you got to go with the guys that are hot. So I think, as we go forward, hopefully over the next couple of weeks, the biggest thing with those guys, I'm confident in giving them the football. They know exactly what to do. The question is week to week, can they continue to pick up the adjustments in protection? Because you talk about getting ready for what Coach Elko does on defense. I mean, you get to that third down package, and it's not. It's complicated, and if you go back and you watch last year's game, he didn't quite do as much this year. But if you go back and watch last year's game, and you saw Kelly and Trevor both flipping protections, changing the slide, doing all that kind of stuff, and that's tough on a young running back to process that. And then once you process it, now you physically got to go out and you got to block, a linebacker one-on-one in the A gap. So I'm getting closer. Definitely feel good about those guys with the ball. It's just a function of feeling good about the protection plan that week, and then can they go out and they execute the protection plan.
Have either of them jumped ahead of the other? Are they pretty close as far as?
They're still pretty close. I think that when we started out early on in fall camp, I would say that Mikey kind of got off to the faster start just because there wasn't a whole lot of install. He was just relying on his athleticism, making a couple of plays. And then Ches is a guy that wants to do it right. And when you're still just learning, it's hard to do it right. And Coach Elliott's on you every single play. But now what I've started to see is that Ches is really starting to become a little bit more consistent, and now Mikey is starting to slow down to where he can understand the protection piece of it. So I think they're both still there neck and neck, and hopefully we'll have some situations here down the road where both those guys can get some meaningful snaps so we can get some experience in.
Coach Tony was saying a couple weeks ago that you were really picky and really stingy with scholarship offers. What does he mean by that? And I guess what's your style in that regard?
Well, one. When I decided to leave corporate America to get into coaching, I kind of sat down and said, what's going to be my identity, my philosophy? And I remember back when I was in high school, and I had some smaller Division I offers, 1AA offers, and this was back before social media. And so I remember calling the school saying, hey, I'm ready to come. And they're like, well, we gave your scholarship away. And I didn't know anything about it. So I said, one, if I'm ever in that position, then I'm just going to be transparent, and let guys know exactly, what they're getting. And I don't want it to be a situation where they necessarily fall in love with the recruiting piece of it, but they fall in love with everything that's associated with the program, the real meat and potatoes. And then two, I think that running back is a developmental position. I think that those guys, have a chance to really develop, later in their high school career. And so I want to take my time, and then I just want to make sure that they're the right fit. And if I'm only getting one, I can't afford to get the wrong one. because if I take the wrong one, you know, and he leaves on me, you know, we don't have a junior college policy here. I can't go get anybody. So I want to make sure I got the right guys that are committed. And last night it was pretty cool. Zach Brooks and C.J. Davidson came by to say hello. They were in town for the game, and I got a responsibility to those guys to make sure that I bring in the right guys to represent them going forward. Because we break it down, you know, every day after practice is beasts, you know, and those guys take pride, you know, in what they developed and that culture. And so I just want to make sure I bring the right guys in. And the same thing I know what it takes to play for Coach Sweeney. And I think a lot of people outside the program, oh man, he dances in the locker room and everything's great. But I mean, he's in a good way, he's very, very demanding, you know, and he's going to hold you accountable. And you want to make sure you have the right men, young men that are looking for that. And I think you got to take your time in recruiting and get to know those young men, or else you're going to put yourself in a situation where you may not get a fit.
Thank you, Coach.
Thanks, Coach.
All right.
Thank you, Tony. Appreciate you. Thank you.